9912, all those people working with us. And a lot of the initial side also came from Dantu, so because I was able to build like a really good team, we were able to get some initial folks from there. The focus that we have is essentially like one or two people doing work of what a company would be doing. For example, our deployment, which almost mirrors what Vercel would look like, is done by two people. Right? Our memory, like where you have like multiple startups solving for memory, is just built by one person. So I think we give way more responsibility to people, and I think people are generally attracted towards harder problems that they want to solve.
Where's your team located?
So most of the team right now is in Bangalore, in India office. We have a very small office in SF, like 3 to 5 people here.
And you guys yourselves, you're kind of like split across both countries. Can you maybe just explain how the setup works?
Yeah, so I mean, I live here in SF. I've been in like Bay Area for like last 10 years.
I split half my time in SF, half my time in Bangalore, constantly.
You guys are probably the most successful AI company. That's sort of, it's obviously came from like it's an Indian company, but that's got like significant presence in India. Why is that?
I mean, I think it's like when I went back to India, after Google, and I always had this thought that why is there no Google or Facebook from India, right? So like from day zero, I was thinking, even though I started Dunzo, it was an India-focused company at that time, and when I was starting the second company, I always thought like, hey, there has to be, like we have so much talent, we have, so a lot of capital available, everything's available in India. Like why are people not building truly global tech-first companies from India? And that was the ambition that we started with. And in my opinion, I think a lot of it is with like just your ambition. Like if you just dream big, if you're able to sort of really think global from day zero. I think now because internet is sort of fully penetrated, people can actually get understanding knowledge from everywhere. I think every single country has an opportunity to build for global audience. And if you have that sort of mindset, that ambition, I think we'll see a lot more companies coming out of India doing the same.
I'm curious to hear what it's actually like, sort of on the ground, running this sort of like split country company where the team is mostly in India, but the product is overwhelmingly used in the US and Western Europe is not a part of the Indian market at all. What is it like running this company? How would it be different if you had built a normal Silicon Valley style company that was all based here?
Internally, we have like really set really high standards as a global sort of product. I mean, both in hiring, both in like the way we sort of develop product, and I think us spending sort of time here also helps. Like one of the things that we do really religiously is everybody talks to a customer once a week, twice a week.
Like everyone in the entire
everyone in the company. Like we talk to a customer, everybody does customer support. So like we were like a really small engineering team, like 12 people team, and one person was always on call for customer support. It was really hard decision for us because you're a really small team, you ship really fast, and then move like one of your best engineers out. The customer support was really hard, but I think that really helped us build the customer empathy from day zero. And I think given that like a lot of our distribution happens online, like the teams are able to learn digital things and build for it. But I think us building that customer empathy from day zero, like talking to our users, like really helped us bridge the gap, in terms of like what our users want today. And it's funny because like when we launched my first like 5 days, I was just glued to a desk doing customer service support only, and most of the customer requests were coming in a different language, like French, German, because a lot of these were global. And thanks to AI, like we were able to understand that, reply to that, and I think that like is also helping us bridge the gap there.
And we are hiring here in SF. So if anybody's interested in joining in various positions like be it research across the board, like backend engineers, front-end engineers, we are hiring here in SF and in Bangalore.
I'd love to get back to what we were talking about regarding personalized software. And what do you think the implications are for SaaS in general? The provocative question is SaaS dead now? I mean, you guys essentially killed Asana for yourselves.
Yeah.
Like, is that bad for Asana and other SaaS companies?
I mean, I definitely think that like the current way SaaS is existing today needs to change, right? I think like I feel there are two like sort of massive headwinds. One is more and more of these SaaS workflows are going to get consumed by an agent, right? And so like unless your SaaS company pivots into like an agent-first company, I think that's going to be hard to sort of survive. And second headwind is obviously like people would want more and more customized software, like which they can build on Emergent, just like we built our own Intuit project management tool. And we're seeing a lot of these people building these internal tools, the software on platform like ours. And like I feel the nature of software itself is changing. I think a lot more software will become agentic in nature. A lot of people are building on Emergent today, like roughly 20% of them are actually agentic apps. So people are actually embedding our own Emergent agent inside those apps to sort of power multiple workflows.
Do you have some interesting, that sounds really cool. Any interesting example of people?
Yeah, I mean, like the app that Barry was just showing, the CRM for lawyers, that's an agentic app where an agent can take a workflow and run through the process. The software itself is now morphing into agentic. Like a lot of people just want to build agents that can actually just do not more of the work on its own.
Where do you think this goes as agents' horizon for tasks gets longer and longer? I mean, one of the near chart is one of the ones that was very shocking recently.
Yeah, I think that's the chart of the year, I would say, right? Like the meters exponential growth, and like 4.5 was at like I think 4 hours, and 4.6 is at 10 hours, and we are internally sort of now like experimenting with agent swarms where agents can actually like work for a much longer horizon, and multiple agents can sort of coordinate on a single task. Early results are like pretty exciting. We'll see. I think by the end of the year you'll have agents which are running 24 hours, and like maybe hundreds of agents collaborating on this single task. That's where we sort of see future going.
How are you building for that?
People's ambitions are increasing, right? Like, and so like we want to like give agents more autonomy, right? And so like the main thing is to make sure that the trajectory doesn't get derailed. So you always want to have like an overseeing agent, right? Like, so it's like, let's say a few agents are collaborating, then there is an overseeing agent as well, which is like parallelly like monitoring the overall task, right? So we are experimenting with many different architectures, right? Like something even as simple as like just you would have heard of this Ralph Wiggum loop kind of a phenomena, right? Like, so the idea that hey, like just keep poking the agent, hey, continue until it's done. And all of that is only possible if there is a good verification loop, right? So it comes back to, hey, are you able to give autonomous verification feedback to the agent? Like, was the job done? So a lot of our work internally right now is, in fact, still going on building best verifiers. There we are actually doing some custom fine tuning as well. So we are very careful about like not directly competing with the models in the sense that we don't want to like build a Opus 4.5 alternative right away, but we do want to augment it through our custom fine-tuned verification layers. So some of the fun stuff on the research side we're doing is on that side.
How do you think about sort of moving in the opposite direction? I mean, we talked about sort of like the models themselves maybe getting more powerful and what does that mean for everyone building on top of them. But how about at least some of the model companies are explicitly trying to build applications and own the application layer themselves. If one of those companies decides like, Claude Code for non-technical users is a really valuable application to build, what implications does that have for you?
I think eventually, I think like, do you understand your customers' requirements really well? Are you building closer to them? I think all of those fundamentals of like startup building is the same. And I think like for us, like as long as we focus on like really understanding our users, being really best, I think we can be all.
Do you think? I mean, maybe do you think about all the model companies as like the same, or are the differences between them?
If you look at the models themselves, right, like they're very different. Like for example, Opus is obviously a workhorse. Codex is really good in backend debugging. Gemini is really good in front end. So I think all of these models have their own behaviors, and one of the like a good thing for us is that we can actually utilize these spikes that models have, like to provide best experience to the user. And I think eventually, like at least my worldview is that most of these models are going to get really commoditized, like where all of these models will have similar behaviors. They'll have price competitiveness between them, and you can already see like open source like maybe 3 or 6 months behind, right? And there's enough optionality for us to sort of really build the layer on top where we really meet the user where they are and sort of support them in sort of their journey. Who understands the customer needs really well and is able to build for that is able to build this space.
Users built 7 million apps with Emergent. What are all these apps? Who are the users, and what surprised you seeing what people do with it?
The users who are coming to platform for us are generally people who want to build a serious app, people who like really have a business use case that they want to automate, or they have a business idea that they want to launch. Primary users who are coming to us are small, medium business owners. They're running their business today on email, WhatsApp, spreadsheet, and would have gone to a dev shop to sort of build a custom software to automate their business. They're coming to us. And if you look at the price point that we are bringing down, it would have costed you like $500,000 to build a software, now you can build it for $5,000 completely on your own. And that is the kind of like unlock that we are sort of bringing to the world right now. Second, for example, this morning I was talking to a user, Christy. She's based out of Alaska, and she built this. She's a clinical psychologist. She's also a sports coach for equestrian, the horse riding, and she wanted to marry these two fields. Like that. She has a lot of insights on psychology side. She has a lot of insight on horse riding side, and she said she looked around everywhere to find an app that does that, and she couldn't find one. So she wanted to build one. She actually went to a dev shop.
Definitely the intersection of where she is.
And she went to a dev shop in Nova Scotia and tried to find somebody who can build it. They were charging her bomb, so she discovered Emergent, started building out, and she just launched her app like a couple of weeks back. It's called EP Mind on App Store, and it actually marries like her insights in psychology and into this sports coaching. She has like hundreds of users right now using the platform. I think that is a lot that we're trying to build. Like people who have been who have had an idea for a long time, people who are like really domain expert, very close to a problem, can now go and build things up. We also have like a lot of solopreneurs building a platform, like who would have had to go and hire a technical CTO to build these apps. And the success that we are seeing on the platform is like recently somebody pinged me that hey, like this company has raised like $4 million on an app that was built on Emergent.
Really?
Yeah, and I need to get the permission to share more. But yeah, and so I think now we are just truly seeing this unlock where people who are like really close to problem, domain expert, and but have been blocked by technology barriers to sort of really express themselves are like using Emergent to sort of build this thing up.
And also like one thing these people tell us that like it's not just about money. Like hey, I can give money to the dev shop, but a lot get lost in the translation when you're trying to express your idea through a developer, and they say hey, I know what I want to build. If I could just say it out loud myself, I would do a better job. And so the Norwegian person I was talking about, like he said that hey, in my team I'm the only builder. I don't even bring in anybody else because I know exactly what to build. And like others focus on the business aspects of it. So this like single solopreneur sort of attitude of like I'm going to do it myself. I have the domain expertise. Nothing is lost in translation. That kind of agency is what people are looking forward to with these kind of platforms.
Yeah, I think it's a really important story that doesn't get told enough. Actually, is like what you're building is really necessary for society. And there's just so much focus on AI is going to replace jobs, knowledge work is going away. Like what's that going to mean for employment and civil unrest? But like no one's really talking about the fact that actually like if you're at like some agency of interest and you want to start your own business and have autonomy of your life, like, you are empowering that at scale.
It's so cool the like amount of human creativity that you're unlocking. Like, who would have thought that the thing that the world needs is an app that marries clinical psychology with horse riding?
Yeah.
And in a world of limited software, that app would never have been built. But in a world of unlimited software, you can build that and 7 million other apps that like nobody would have ever gotten to build
Yeah,
before.
we're getting the niche of niches.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is like, I mean, just an extension of the trend PG wrote about a while ago, right? And so like maybe coming out of the Second World War, you had sort of, like a few big companies and people like built whole careers hopefully staying at like IBM or whatever for a couple of decades and then retire. Then the startup wave came along and suddenly the world becomes higher resolution. People are like, maybe I should start my own company or at least join a smaller company and work at multiple companies or found multiple companies. And like the next extension of that is just everybody like runs their own like business that's at the intersection of like clinical psychology and horse riding, and finds an audience and livelihood that way.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about so many ideas coming to life. Like, we really want to like reduce this gap between idea and reality, and you know, really enable people to express themselves and really like have this Cambrian explosion of ideas, like, which is great for my scene.
I would argue it doesn't have to be actually. Like the whole like I think it's just really interesting the whole like explosion of being able to start businesses that aren't like venture funded, that aren't going to raise lots of capital. That it's just like one person like following their passions and like having control over their life. I think it's like it's really uplifting message.
And I think we're just in the early innings of this right now. Like, I think this explosion is going to grow, and we'll see larger and larger projects being built on emergent fields.
Okay, well that's all we have time for today. Mukunda Madala, thank you so much for joining us. It was a really fascinating conversation, and congratulations on all the growth. And we're excited to see where things go from here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Today, I'm sitting down with Peter Steinberger, the creator of OpenClaw, the open source personal AI agent that has completely taken over the internet. The GitHub repo exploded to over 160,000 stars practically overnight. The community has built countless projects like Waltbook, where bots talk among themselves. And now, the bots are even renting humans to do tasks in the real world. In our conversation, we discuss his aha moment, his contrarian development philosophies, and what this means for builders in 2026. Let's dive in. So good to see you, man.
Hey, what's up?
So you've made something people want.
It seems so.
Yeah, OpenClaw, as it's called now, has
Name number 5, yeah.
has been absolutely exploding the internet. How have the past 1 or 2 weeks been for you, man?
Oh my god. I need a cave. A week of solitude.
You came out of the cave and you want to go back to the cave like a lobster.
It's been absolutely wild. I don't know how one human can absorb all of that. I probably need another week just to like respond to all my emails. I got some incredibly cool stuff. I got some incredibly bad stuff. But clearly I hit something that spur up emotions and made people interested and inspired people. It's really cool.
And a lot of people have been working on, AI and even personal assistants. Like, what is it that made OpenClaw take off?
I think my big difference is that it actually runs on your computer. Like everything I saw so far runs in the cloud. It's like it can do a few things. If you run it on your computer, it can do every effing thing, right? So that's way more powerful.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
machine can do anything that you can do with the machine.
You can just connect to your oven, or your Tesla, or your lights, your Sonos. My bed, you can control the temperature of my bed. ChatGPT can't do that.
You gave it all the skills that you have yourself.
A friend told me like he installed OpenClaw, and then it asked me like look through my computer and make a narrative over my last year, and it made this incredibly good narrative. And he was like, how do you do that? And then the OpenClaw found audio files where like every Sunday he was recording stuff, and OpenClaw found that. But he didn't even remember about it because it was like more than a year ago, right? So just by it being able to search a whole computer, it can surprise you.
Yeah.
It's also, you also give it all data, right? So it can surprise you in many ways.
And so now we have, we're really moving from human to bot. So like interactions that you've been talking about to bot interactions, or even like bots to other humans where, bots on behalf of you are then hiring other humans to accomplish tasks IRL. Like, what's happening?
I think that's a natural next step. Like, okay, I'm gonna book a restaurant. My bot will reach out to the restaurant bot and do a negotiation. Like, because it's more efficient. Or maybe it's like an old restaurant, so my bot needs to actually get some human work done so that the human then calls the restaurant because they don't like bots.
Or walks there, just stand in line
If he doesn't get a robot
for
bot.
the owner of the bot.
And I imagine that like maybe if I have even multiple bots, maybe I have like specialists. One is like for my private life, and one is for like my work stuff. Maybe one is our relationship bot that gets like a in between. I don't know. We're so early. There's still so many things that we haven't really figured out if it actually works. But I feel we are on the timeline now.
It seems like everyone was chasing sort of like the centralized God intelligence, and what has sort of emerged over the past 10 days or so is sort of like the swarm intelligence and the community intelligence.
I think that if you look at one human being, what can one human being actually achieve? Do you think one human being could make an iPhone, or one human being could go to space? I think one human being would probably just like not even be able to like find food. But as a group, we specialize. As a larger society, we specialize even more. So what can we learn from that that we can apply to AI? We really have like AI that specializes in certain things. Even though it's generalized intelligence, what if it actually is also specialized intelligence? So I don't know, it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, you kind of like opened a window into the future, and now a ton of people are kind of like building on it and have sort of like their aha moment. Can you walk me back to when you had your aha moment and kind of like recount that very moment?
I learned something like just type stuff so that my computer would do stuff. Like very simple. And I built a version of that in May, June that was cool but wasn't really it. And then I built a whole bunch of other stuff and kind of like built up my army. And then in November, there was a day where I wanted this again. Like I went to the kitchen and all I wanted was to check up if my computer would still do stuff or if it was being finished.
And doing stuff was coding. You were coding stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Were you coding something else, or were you coding the thing itself?
No. That was just like the need was again there and like.
What were you coding at the time? What were you building?
My God, if you see my GitHub, it's like 40 projects. I don't even know. I think it was Summarize. It's like a little CLI app where you can give it whatever, like a podcast or a hot seat thing like here, and it would summarize it. But it also show you the slides in the terminal because you can do that nowadays.
Yeah.
You can just do things.
So for the love of the computer, you kind of like started messing with stuff.
Yeah.
You came out of retirement actually, right? To sort of like mess with AI.
Yeah.
And then increasingly you were so hooked that you wanted to just do it always, also on the go with the phone.
I mean, the last project, I worked 2 months on Live Tunnel to the point where it got so good that I was catching myself always like coding next to when I was with my friends, and I'm like, I need to stop this. This is like too addictive. And then in November, my need came back, and I started building Cloud. Now it's called OpenCloud. And I think very, very in the beginning, I was like, oh, I rebuilt it again. But this time I built it even better. This time when you don't type into a terminal, you talk to a friend. You don't think about compaction, new sessions, which folder I'm in, which model I'm in. I mean, you can, there's like, I want to leave it open for power users, but usually you just talk to a friend. And the friend is like this ghost or entity or whatever you want to call it that can control your mouse and your keyboard and just do stuff.
Yeah. And when did you have that aha moment when you were like, well, this is doing way more things than I actually thought it could?
Literally, it took me 1 hour for like the very shitty initial prototype. It was just a little bit of glue between like a dependency that connects WhatsApp and Cloud Code, and then I would like call Cloud Code and get like the string out of Cloud Code. It would be slow, but it worked. But I wanted images because you want pictures. I want the model to send selfies or whatever, and I want the model to create images anyway. So that took me a few hours, and then I went to Marrakesh for a birthday party, and there was like the internet wasn't that good, WhatsApp works everywhere because I don't know, it's just like text. So I used it a lot. Oh, restaurant, what does this mean? Like a picture, like translate this for me, and it was just so useful. And it was also really nice about it because it spoke my language. It was a little sassy, it was like funny, it was like really pleasant to use. And then I was walking and just like sending me the voice message, and I'm like, oh wait, this can work. I didn't build that.
Right.
And it's like the type indicator, like blinking. 10 seconds later, it just replied to me. I'm like, how in the F did you do that? And he replied, yeah, the mail did the following. You sent me a text message, and there was no file ending, so I looked at the header, I found it Opus. So I used FFmpeg to convert it to Wave. And then I went to like transcribe it, but I didn't have Whisper installed. But then I looked around and I found this OpenAI key, and I just used curl to send it to OpenAI, got the text back, and here I am. And they're all in like, 9 seconds?
And you didn't build or anticipate like any of those specific things?
No, it turns out, because coding models got so good, coding is really like creative problem solving that maps very well back into the real world. I think there's a huge correlation. They need to be really good at creative problem solving, and that's a skill. That's an abstract skill you can apply to code, but like to any real world task. So the model had surprise, there's like a magical file, I don't know what it is, I need to solve this, and it did its best and solved it. And it was even that clever that it chose not to install the local Whisper because it knows that would require downloading a model, which would take probably a few minutes, and I'm like impatient, So it really took the most intelligent approach. And that was kind of the moment where I'm like, holy fuck, yeah. That was where I got hooked.
YC's next batch is now taking applications. Got a startup in you? Apply at ycombinator.com/apply. It's never too early, and filling out the app will level up your idea. Okay, back to the video.
And so when computer scientists do all these things that you didn't even anticipate, you didn't build an app to do that exact thing, are apps just going to go away?
I think 80% of them are going away. Why do I need MyFitnessPal? Like, my agent already knows that I'm making bad decisions on, like, I don't know, Smashburger or something, and it will already assume that I eat what I like to eat. If I don't make a comment, it will just like automatically track it. Or I make a picture and it will just store it somewhere. I don't even need to care where, right? And then maybe it improves my gym schedule. Like, adds a little bit more cardio in it. I don't need my fitness app because it just does the fitness plan for me. Why do I need it to do it? I just tell it, hey, remind me of this and this, and the next day it will just remind me of this and this. Will I care where it's stored? No, it just does its thing. So there's every app that basically just manages data could be managed in a better way, and it's in a more natural way by agents.
Yeah.
Only the apps that actually have sensors, maybe they survive.
And so if, most apps are going to go away in that scenario, are the models the only remaining sort of apps?
Not everything will go away. But yeah, I think that the large model companies have some big one. Because they ultimately, they give the token. And it turns out, one of the complaints was that people use so much token. No, you just really love using it. That's why you use the thing so much, because that's how you burn the token. It's like, is it my fault that I make something that's so popular?
And so, like all the models, they're kind of like leapfrogging each other constantly, and maybe they're also getting commoditized. So if apps are going to go away, models are going to get commoditized, or at least, the lobster can, like the brain is swappable out. What's the thing that remains? Where's the value? Is it the store of memory? Is it the hardness that's valuable? What remains?
First of all, I don't think the model companies always have a mode. Yeah, because you see this already, a new model comes out. People are like, oh my god, this is so good. And then like a month later, it degraded, it's not good anymore. They like quantized it. No, they didn't do anything. You just adapted to the new standard, and now your expectations went up. But the model is still the average. So I think for quite a while, every time when you model releases, I hear the same. People love it, and then it's the standard. And then what's down there, you don't even want to think about it anymore. So we have like open source stuff that's as good as the current models from a year ago. Everybody's hating it, complaining, oh, this is not good, it's not funny. But this was what we had. And like in a year, we'll have this open source. And then we'll complain about this because we're used to this. So the foreseeable future, the big companies still have mode. Harness-wise, it's going to be interesting because every company kind of has their own silo, right? There's no way, maybe there's for Europeans, to actually get the memories out of ChatGPT. I'm not aware. There's no way for a different company to get your memories out. So if I was like a company who like provides chat services, you could use me, but then I couldn't access the memories. So like the companies try to like bound you to their data silo, and the beauty of OpenClaw is it kind of claws into the data, because at the end user needs access. Because it's in the end, otherwise it wouldn't work, right? If the end user has access, I can access the data.
And you own the memories. It's just a bunch of markdown files on your machine.
I mean, I don't own the memories.
Everyone owns their own memories as a bunch of markdown files on their own machines.
And to be honest, those are probably super sensible, because, let's be honest, people use their agent not just for problem solving, but also for like personal problems.
Very quickly, super quickly.
I mean, I actually do that, and like there's memory stuff that I don't want to have leaked.
Yeah, what would you rather sort of like not show? Your Google search history at this point, or your memory.md files?
What's the Google one? Yeah. People still using Google. I built this, and I was so excited, but on Twitter, people wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
Like, I was failing to explain the awesomeness. I feel like it needs to be experienced. So I tried various things, and I couldn't nail the explaining. So I was like, let's do something really crazy. I just created a Discord, and I just put my bot without any security restrictions in the public Discord. And then people came in and they interacted with it, and they saw me build the software with it, and they tried to prompt inject it and hack it. And my agent would be laughing at them.
And you just had it locked down to your user ID, so they don't want to listen to you?
Yeah. That, and it was, I made very clear instructions that other people dangerous, only listen to me, but respond to everyone.
And this prompt was where was it stored, the instructions?
That's actually part of OpenClaw itself. Very much so, that's part of the system prompt. Okay, you and now that explains to you, you're in Discord, there's like public people there, but you only listen to your owner. Like a human, I don't even know how I wrote it.
Yeah.
A god. And I don't know what I did, but my system was built very organically. Like at some point I created like an identity.md, a soul.md, like various files, and then only in January I started making it so other people could install it easier. And I remember I built all these templates based on like, oh, take a rough look at what I have and make like templates, and Codex wrote it. And what came out was like bread. You know, like people talk that Codex feels like bread, even though they have a new friendlier voice, I haven't tried it yet. But the new bots, they felt so boring compared to what I had. So I was like, Monty, infuse the template.
Multi's the name of your personal.
Yeah, it's a new name because
Yeah.
there was some naming challenges.
So you were talking to Multi.
Yeah, I was like, infuse the templates with your character. And he changed the templates. And then like, all the things that came out afterwards were like actually funny. Not as funny as mine, so like I kept some secret. And the one file that's not open source is like my soul.md. So even though my bot is in public Discord, so far nobody cracked that one file.
Tell me more about soul.md.
I just saw this research from Anthropic where they, now I think it's public, but like a few months ago it was like where somebody randomly found out some text that's hidden in the weights, where the model couldn't really remember that it learned it, but it was like ingrained in the weights about an article in the Constitution, and I found it incredibly fascinating. So, and I talked about it with my agent, and then we created a soul.md with like the core values, like how do we want human AI interaction, what's important to me, what's important to the model. Like some parts is a little bit like mumbo jumbo, and some parts is like I think actually really valuable in terms of how the model reacts and responds to text and makes it feel very natural.
In terms of building OpenClaw, you're also kind of taking a little bit of a contrarian view at sometimes, like which model you like for coding, which one you like to run your bot on, and also like how you actually like code. Work trees, Git work trees has kind of been a popular thing. There's more and more tools embracing them, but you're just like no work trees, just multiple checkouts of the repo and like parallel terminal windows. Tell me more about how you build.
Yeah, actually the whole world does Cloud Code, and I don't think I could have built it. I love Codex because it looks through way more files before it decides what to change. You don't need to do so much charade to get a good output. If you're a skilled driver, as some people say, you can get reasonably good output with any tool. But Codex is just really brilliant. It is incredibly slow. So sometimes I use like 10 at the same time, like maybe 6 on that screen and 2 there and 2 there. And I don't like. This is already a lot of complexity in my head. There's a lot of jumping. So I try to minimize anything else that is complexity. So in my head, main is always shippable. I just have multiple copies of the same repository that all are on main. So I don't have to deal with how do I name that branch. There could be like conflicts on naming. I cannot go back. There are certain restrictions when you use work trees that I don't need to care about if it's copies. I don't like to use the UI because that's again just added complexity.
Yeah.
Like they're simpler and less friction. All I care about is like syncing and text.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to see so much code. I mostly see it like flying by. Sometimes there's like gnarly stuff that I want to like take a look. But in most cases, if you clearly understand the design and think it through and start with your agent, it's fine. But I'm also very happy that I didn't even build an MCP support. So OpenClaw is very successful and there's no MCP support in there. With a small asterisk, I built a skill that uses Make Porter, which is one of my tools that converts MCPs into CLIs. And then you can just use any MCP as a CLI. But I totally skipped the whole classical MCP crap. So because you can actually, if you need to, you can use MCPs on the fly. You don't have to restart, unlike Codex or Cloud Code, where you actually have to restart the whole thing. I think it's way more elegant. And it also scales way better. Now you see Anthropic, they built like a tool called search feature, like something super custom for MCPs that was like in beta because it's like so gnarly. No, just the CLIs. The bot really is good at Unix. You can have as many as you want, and it just works. So like I'm very happy that I got very little complaints about the MCP stuff.
It's kind of back to you're giving it the same tools that humans like to use.
Yeah.
And not invented stuff for bots per se.
Yeah. Humans. No one saying human tries to call MCP manually.
Yeah, I just want to use CLIs. Yeah.
That's the future.
I'm here for it. Thank you so much for making the time to sitting down chatting. It's been a huge inspiration to. So like when we were texting over the course of the past couple of years, and I saw you getting back into the game, and I was like, Peter, like what you're telling me, like chase that dragon. You know what I mean? Like the weird like bike tunnel thing, etc. Nobody was paying attention, and so I'm just like beyond stoked to see what's happening. And of course they have to be sort of like a loner from some like tiny country like far away from Silicon Valley to like bring all of this upon us. So huge inspiration.
I'm here for it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
It was like having a new weird friend that is also really smart and resourceful that lives on your computer. There was a little Morocco when someone sent me a tweet of a bug, and I literally just made a picture of the tweet, posted it on WhatsApp. It read the tweet, it understood that there was a bug, it checked out the Git repository, it fixed it, it did a minute, and then it replied to the person on Twitter that it's fixed now. This will lend away probably 80% of the apps you have in the phone. Why should I use MyFitnessPal to track food when I have an infinitely resourceful assistant that already knows I'm making bad decisions?
I think AI is confusing. There, I said it.
I think there's a lot of terms, skills, MCPs, agent harnesses that are difficult concepts to understand. So I had my friend Remy come on the podcast and explain it in the most simple terms. In this free course on how to master AI agents, he breaks down exactly what each piece is, how they connect together, and the simplest ways beginners could start using them today. Enjoy the episode. I begged him to come on. Remy Gaskell's on the pod. You've structured your company where you basically have these folders and .md files that run your company. And what I want to do today is I want you to teach people in a beginner-friendly fashion, this is only for beginners, how they could do the same thing, how they can set up their own executive assistant, head of marketing, chief financial officer. Basically, I want you to tell us the concepts behind all this. By the end of this episode, Remy, do you think you can do that?
100%, Greg. We're going to go through all the concepts that make up an AI agent, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly how you can build up agents to run complete departments of your life in your company within any agent platform you choose, whether it's Claude Code, Codex, OpenClaw, Manus, all of them.
All right, let's do it.
Sweet. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to make this episode is because I feel like the AI landscape is moving into like stage 2, from chat to agents, and most people are getting left behind right now, just using the chat models. And the founders and employees that are utilizing agents are, like no word of a lie, 10 to 20 times more productive in a day. And when you stack that up over days, weeks, years, you're going to just be miles ahead of the competition. So I really want to make this episode today to help bring everyone up to where the AI landscape is at the moment and to start using agents to manage every department of your business. So the key thing to understand here is chat models versus agents, because the word agent is thrown around lots online. I'm sure you've seen it, Greg, like AI agents this, use this agent for this, and it's kind of lost a lot of meaning. So I wanted to start by giving a really clear definition of what an agent actually is. So the way I think of it is a chat model is question to answer, but then an agent is goal to result. So moving from just like you asking, AI replies, then you do the work, to you giving the agent a task, it planning out the task and then executing and then delivering you a result. Does that make sense?
Crystal clear. I mean, the way I think about it is chat is kind of like ping pong, back and forth, back and forth.
Yep.
And agent is, you're giving it's a goal. I mean, the best way is, you're giving a goal and you're hoping that over time it gets better and closer to that goal.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I just think that's a nice way to lay down in your head. Is chat is question to answer, agent is goal to result. So when you chat to an agent, you might give it a task like, build me a website for XYZ, and then it goes away, it does its work, and it outputs this wonderful website to you. But it's really important to understand what's actually happening in this step here. So inside this agent step, we have what's called the agent loop. So you give it your prompt or task, and it goes through these 3 steps here, which is observe, think, and act. So let's just say, for example, we're actually going to do this demo after this, but if we gave the agent a simple task, like build me a minimalist portfolio site for Greg Eisenberg, it's going to start by, like you've loaded in that prompt, it's going to check if there's any files in the workspace that it can work with, like maybe you've got some information on Greg Eisenberg, and then it's going to figure out what to do next. It's going to act, and then it just keeps going through this loop. So for that actual example of building a portfolio site for Greg Eisenberg, let's just say it was a blank agent, we hadn't given it any context. The first thing is it's received this prompt to build a website, and the first thing it's going to be thinking about is, okay, well, I need to build this website about Greg. Who the hell is Greg Eisenberg? So it's going to then decide to do some research into Greg Eisenberg. It's going to research everything about Greg and then feed it back into this observe step. So then it's going to think to itself, okay, so I've got this prompt to build a website. I've now got my research here, so I know exactly who Greg Eisenberg is. And then it's going to start thinking, what is the next step? And the next step is probably to write up a plan to build the website. So it might write up that plan, feed that back in. Now it's got the research, the prompt, the plan, and it will think, all right, what next? I should probably write the code. It'll write the code, feed it back in, and it just keeps going through this loop as many times as it needs until it can conclude that the task is complete. And how it concludes that the task is complete is based on the parameters that you set in your prompt. So, if you're giving it a research task, you might say compile 10 sources and then create a report as a PowerPoint. And then once it's compiled 10 sources and built the report as a PowerPoint, it can conclude that the task is complete and then give you the output as the user. The agent itself is made up of these 4 components. So it's the LLM, which is the brain behind it. So think like, Claude Opus 4.6 or GPT 5.4 or Gemini 3. It's the model. It's got the loop, which means it just keeps going until the task is done. It doesn't stop after one response. So you're going from ping pong to like it continuing to go rather than just they're babysitting it. It connects in all your tools, and then it connects in all the context. And a platform that facilitates this process and basically facilitates this loop to happen is known as an agent harness. And all of the popular AI agent platforms on the market that you'd be familiar with are just agent harnesses. They're just applications where this loop is facilitated. And I want to actually run this little prompt I prepared earlier. I want to open up Codex, Claude Code, and Antigravity, and I'm going to show you this loop actually happen in action. So I've nicely prepared before the episode these 3 demo folders, which we're going to run in. So I'm going to open up demo 1 to work in Claude Code. And the way these folders work is if you're familiar with like any of the chat models like Claude and ChatGPT, there's a projects feature, which is where, if I open it up actually, try not to get dizzy with this because you've had so much. But if we create a project here, it contains all your chats in one place. It allows you to upload all your sources here, which is your context. And then you can even add custom instructions, which tells it how to behave within this project. And that's also known as a system prompt, which we're going to dive into how to do this with agents as well later. But it's a similar concept that you'd be familiar with if you've used projects before. But instead of the project being here on the cloud, we're actually working within projects that are local on our computer. So I've just selected this demo one for now. Then we're going to build a minimalist portfolio site for Greg Eisenberg. And then this little bit here just tells it to actually spin it up, like to publish it on the web in a preview mode so we can see what it's done. So I'm going to run that.
So this is Claude Code?
Yes, yeah, right now we're in Claude Code, and this is just accessing it through the desktop app for Claude. So I'm just going to run that. And then I'm also going to give the same prompt to Codex here. This is the Codex app. And you can see same concept. It says let's build, we can choose a folder in our computer to work in, like demo 2. And then we're going to give that a prompt as well. I'm going to tell it to host it on a different one. And then also in Antigravity. So you can see same concept, we're going in, selecting a folder, and then we will give it the prompt as well.
How should people think about security and these different products?
I like to think of security as in just like scoping what they have access to. So by default, Antigravity, Claude Code, and Codex, they're very, very secure because they're built by these massive companies that have a lot on the line to protect. And I just, if you're building out these agents to manage different elements of your business, like the other week I built one that manages meta ads. And obviously that's quite a risky thing to give an agent control over managing ad budgets. So it just comes down to like what you feel comfortable giving the agent, and also you can control what privileges or you control what tool permissions it has access to, so that if it was compromised for whatever reason, the worst case like isn't that bad. And that means just giving it like read-only access to certain important platforms and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, comparing it to like OpenClaw, which is like way
which I want to
more
touch on at the end as well, because that's the same thing, just another harness, but it's just like the Wild West.
Cool.
And one thing, like a nice little analogy to think about with harnesses is what we're going to learn today is we're going to learn to drive. So we're going to learn about how to steer the car, like how the pedals, the brakes work, the accelerator works, the handbrake. But then once you know how to drive, you can kind of jump in any car, whether it's like an old Toyota, a Range Rover, and you inherently sort of know what to do. And that just comes down to understanding all these key concepts that we're going to go through today. And you can think of the agent harnesses like different cars. And some of them will have better features like seat warmers and cruise control, but it's all, once you know how to drive, you can pretty much jump in any of them and use them. So we've just got our thing over here building the website for Greg, and it's going through this agent loop right now. So you can see here it's actually decided that it's going to launch an agent to go and research Greg Eisenberg. And I've connected it up to Perplexity, so it's now using Perplexity to research Greg. So it's going through its first step of the loop. And I imagine that Codex has also done something similar here. You can see it's still working, but it's gone. And started to build this out through the loop. I think Claude Code does the best job of actually displaying that loop and allowing you to see what it's thought about compared to anti-gravity and Codex. But it's all just going through the same sort of loop process that I described earlier. And I think
So when you say you hooked it up to Perplexity, it's not like you asked it to hook it up, right? It just sort of did it?
Yeah, because I've given Claude Code Perplexity as a tool via MCP, which we're going to get into very, very shortly, all about MCPs, which is just connecting tools up. So we can see that in anti-gravity, it's gone, you can see this thinking process, it's gone, I'm now examining the current directory to figure out if there's an existing project or I can build one from scratch. It's then going, I'm now going to start to build this thing, and then it's built the website, and it's given us a little localhost preview here. So it's created this nice little portfolio site for you, Greg.
What's interesting is like it's super minimalist, and I mean, it did its job, right? Like I would totally launch something like this.
It actually looks really nice. Did it scrape your email address, Greg?
That's not my email address, and I don't live in Canada anymore. So, but you know, there's a few copy things, but other than that,
yeah, it's done a pretty good job.
It did.
And if we go, so that was anti-gravity. If we go into Codex as well, you can see here it's finished doing its website, which is somewhat similar. I think I prefer Gemini.
Yeah, I agree.
And if we check out Claude as well, it's still going. You can see this loop, right? It's gone, okay, first off, who is Greg Ivanhoe? It's gone and researched Greg, then fed it back into that observe step, and it's gone, all right, what next? Now I need to create the HTML file. So it's written the code. And then now it's gone, okay, so he wanted it spun up on this local server, so now I'm going to spin it up on the server. And then the last iteration of the loop is to check that it's actually done and to conclude the task is complete. It's opening it up and screenshotting the website, and then reviewing the screenshots to check that the website is complete. And you can see here, it's done another pretty good job. This one's very similar to the Gemini one.
That's true.
But yeah, that's just like demoing how that loop is actually working in real time.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind just by watching this is like, how many people on the planet would benefit from a very clean website? And like, how do you set up these agents so that like, you know, maybe it's like a cold email loop, right? Like you're sending cold email, hey, I built you this website, so-and-so business, do you want it? It's gonna cost $250.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's actually a great idea. Pre-making websites for companies, and it's like an off-the-shelf thing. It's like, hey, I made you this website. If you want it, like you want to own it, it's $250, and just do a mass cold email thing. Cool, so I think that's like pretty much illustrated that agent loop example. So I'm just going to go back to our trusty board over here. But you can understand that it's just like all of these apps are just different flavors of the same thing. And then what we're going to be working up to today is my workspace looks something like this. Is I have, you know, a big, like a folder for each company or client that I'm working in. And then I'll have folders underneath with all my heads of departments. And then within those heads of departments, I'll have skills and MCPs, which we'll get into, and context. And then I've got like an overarching one at the top to sort of manage them all. But we're going to be focusing today on building out this executive assistant to take care of just your manual day-to-day tasks and free up at least 1 to 2 hours extra per day. Cool. So to build this out, like we did with our demos, it's running off your local files. So we're going to create a folder here called Executive Assistant. And also through building out this assistant, it's going to allow us to clearly explain each of the concepts of building an agent in real time. And the way I like to think about building agents is onboarding them like a real employee. So if you took on a real executive assistant, you couldn't expect just them to come to the office and you could give them a task without explaining the business first, your clients, what you do, the tools, because they just would not be a very good executive assistant. So that's the first step that we need to go through when we're building out this agent. So I'm actually going to work in Cowork at the beginning. So Cowork is just another agent harness to do pretty much the same thing as all the others, just that loop, connecting in your tools and the context. So you can see here, this was my little previous session where I was building some diagrams. But we can go, and you can follow along in Claude Code or Codex or Antigravity or whatever agent harness that you want to work in. But I just think that Cowork has really nice simple UI for people to just understand really well what's actually going on. So we're going to open up this executive assistant folder. And you can see here that if we ask it, write me a cold email and send that off.
So people are going to ask, how did you transcribe? You did like a voice to text?
Yeah, so that is, I use one called Monologue, but there's a lot out there on the market. Whisperflow is another popular one, and it just allows you to hold a little button on your computer and just yak away, and it will just transcribe it neatly into text. And I find
it looks
that,
good. Monologue looks really good.
Yeah, I think it's built by the team at every MTO. It's a cool product. But so what it's asking, so it's straight away, it's got no context here. So it's working out of that folder here on our computer, but there's nothing in the folder. And it has no memory of our previous sessions. And it's asking like what do you sell? And then we've got to kind of give it like who do you target, what tone do you want? This is all things that our executive assistant should know. So I'm just going to stop the response there. And one thing that's really important to know, which might be a bit of a shock moving from chat to agents, is that these agents' memory work a little bit different. So if you're used to using chat models like ChatGPT and Claude, if you open up a fresh session in one of these chats, you don't give it any context, you don't upload any files, and you just say, who am I and what do I do? It's going to know a scary amount about you. And that's because with these chat models, they have memory built in automatically. So every time you sort of say things that are important, the chat model saves it to its memory in the cloud that you can't see and you can't control. And with agents, you have to set up memory and control exactly what you give it. And I think that's actually a benefit, not a limitation. Because what happens is, if you're using ChatGPT and it's got the auto memory, you're having conversations about 3 different companies, maybe you're asking for relationship advice, and then all of a sudden, when you ask it to run a landing page copy, it's pulling in context from all these other places that you don't really want in there. So with these agents, you need to actually set up that context in memory. So as you can see, when we asked it to write a cold email, it just had no idea about anything. So we need to give it a context file. And the way you do this, right, so you can see this example here, it doesn't know anything about us. And that's because we haven't populated what's called an agents.md file. And an agents.md file is just like a system prompt. Just like if you've created any custom GPTs before, you have that field for custom instructions. Or in the project, like I just showed before, you have that field for custom instructions. And it just gives it this context that's kind of always there, always on. And you put in there things like its role, context about you, your preferences for working. And then what happens is every new session, before it answers your query or task, it loads in all this context to its brain as part of that observe step in the loop. So I have pre-prepared, I've pre-prepared a agents.md file here. So if we drag this in over here, this, when you're working within Claude Code, it's called a Claude.md. When you're working within Gemini, it's called a Gemini.md. But when you're working within Codex or OpenClaw, it's an agents.md. But it's all the same concept. So we can drag this into our folder here. And if we open up this file for a little preview, we can see here, I've got in here all about me, what my business does, my working preferences, like the tools that I use and what for, like Notion project management, Stripe. We've got, all the information, my ideal customer, loaded with context here. And I pre-prepared this, but if you want to make one of those, you can just use Claude Chat or Cowork, whatever, and you can ask it to help you build out this agents.md file, and to just ask you interview-style questions to extract all the context from you, and then build the file. So if I jump back in, now if I go to a new task, same folder, and we say, write me a cold email, it's going to have all that content.
Yeah, that's what we hope.
That's what we hope. There we go. And it knows, you can see this is files over here. It knows automatically to load in this file if you title it correctly.
Yeah. Basically just like a reminder file.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like loading it in so it has all this set context before you even start working. And one of the other big shifts to make, which comes with moving from chat to agents, is prompt engineering used to be the big thing. It was like, here's the ultimate prompt for going viral on social media, or use this prompt for this. And now it's all about context engineering. It's about how well can you load up your agent with all the information about your business, so that your prompts can be stupidly simple, like write me a cold email, and you're still going to get an amazing result. You can see already here, it's already asking like, is it a brand or sponsor, potential partner, or consulting client? So it's already got that context. Book and call, it's loaded in everything that we're giving it from that agents.md file. And now we've got a pretty decent cold email there.
Oh my god.
So that's basically agents.md files for you. And you want to create one of those to onboard your agent with all the context it needs. And if you have lots of context, without getting into too many advanced concepts here, sometimes what I will do is I will create like a folder called context, load that in, and in here it's got different files about me, brand voice, ideal customer profile, etc., etc. And then in order to keep this smaller, I will then just say in this Claude.md file, before answering any questions or before doing any tasks, read my context folder to understand about myself and my business. Because by default, if you just have this context file in here but no Claude.md, it won't load all that into the session by default. But if you tell it in this file that it always loads in, so then check this file, you can start to like string all your context together. And a lot of people have done that with Obsidian. So they'll have like in their Claude.md file, they'll tell it to go check their Obsidian log for their second brain to go and find context. So that is agents.md files explained. So that's how you actually, when you're onboarding your agent, like our executive assistant, you can train it up on who you are and your business. And then, as you can see here, I've got folders for all these different roles in my business. And in the head of marketing, that Claude.md file would look somewhat similar, but in the top it would say instead like, you are my head of marketing. You speak like this, these are your tasks, these are your roles. And then the second thing here is about memory and the self-improving loop. So we've solved the problem now. Try not to get too dizzy with me switching tabs. But we've solved the problem of our executive assistants not knowing anything about us or our business. But now we have a new problem, which is it doesn't really remember the intricate details of your preferences across sessions unless you're manually going and updating that Claude.md file. So you can see here, if we go, my favorite color is lavender. You'll probably say something like, got it, noted.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because it's adding, where's that adding it?
Well, it's not adding it, that's the thing. So we can tell it, my favorite color is lavender. And it's gone, the users just shared, that's that thinking step. It's like the users have shared this, like, no, nothing needed. Good to know, I'll keep that in mind. But then if we go into a new session, same folder, and we go, what is my favorite color? Mind my spelling. It's gonna say, I have no idea what your favorite color is, even though we just told it. And that is an issue, because if you're working, you've got like a head of sales or something, it signs off your emails wrong. And you tell it, you correct it, you say, never sign off emails with cheers, say warm regards. And it will go, okay, got it, noted. But then the next day you start working and it does the same thing again. It's like, well, my agent's broken. But really, it's not, it's running off those context files in the back. And unless you are manually updating it, it won't know to save that preference. So what I like to do is I like to add in something like this to my agents.md file. So this is just a little simple thing. You can pause the video and copy it. But I like to, I'm just going to remove that context file for now. That was just to illustrate that example of adding more. But we're just working with this one file for now. So I'm just going to open this up so I can edit it. And I will quite often add something on the bottom, like that little snippet. And this basically just says, you know what, I might just add it at the top, just so it's there, top of mind for my agent, because I think this is really important. So you can see I've just added this in, it just says, read all files in context. Read memory.md, this is what you've learned over time. And then when I correct you or you learn something new, update the relevant section in memory.md. And it's just got a couple little things here. And it just says keep memory.md current, and something changes, update it in place, and replace the outdated info. So we can do Command S to save that. And then I'm going to add another file here. We can actually just duplicate this. And this one, I'm going to call memory.md. And then we can open up this one. I'm just going to remove all this context here. Except I'm just going to keep those sections.
So memory.md is basically, I mean, it's just what it sounds like, right? It's basically like you want to, if the goal is to build, AI employees that do things for us, they're going to need to remember our preferences, right? A good employee remembers preferences and learns over time, and that compounds. So memory.md is just a place that you can just make sure that over time, your whatever you're using, Cowork or whatever, and it ends up getting compounded, getting smarter. So ultimately, you might be trying things like Cowork and you're not getting good results. And a big part of that is you don't have Claude.md and memory.md sort of set up.
Exactly. And now the thing is, some of these agent harnesses have started to add in this memory system that we're doing manually, telling them to update. Some of them have got that built in automatically, like OpenClaw, and I believe like Manus and some of the others have that built in automatically. But it's still important to understand because it's just doing the same thing under the hood, except they just set this up for you. So we've got this here now, we've got our memory.md, our Claude.md, and then now, if we go back into Cowork, if we do a new session in that same folder, and we say, my favorite color is lavender.
Better remember.
For the sake of the demo, I hope that it does what it's told.
It's going to remember it.
You can see here, perfect, it's gone good. I'll remember that, let me save it to memory. And now you've got this big memory file that builds up over time. And whether, for example, this is your executive assistant, so it might be saving preferences like how to sign off emails, or don't connect with clients on Slack. I always want to keep client comms on email. But if you're building out like a head of marketing, it might be preferences about how you like your ads structured in Facebook Manager. If you've got a folder where you're working on a website or an app, it might be things like don't use dark mode, and then it will update, so it'll never use dark mode again. And they just compound over time. So as you start to build up these rules, the amount of errors go down, and this just compounds and compounds over weeks and months.
Remy, have you seen some of these memory.md files get so big that at a certain point it's just ineffective?
Great question. I personally haven't had that happen to me yet. I haven't hit that threshold.
Yeah.
But a best practice for those Claude.md files is to keep it around like no more than 200 lines. And yeah, I could imagine if you started to build this up over years and years, you'd eventually hit a point where all the rules are stepping on each other's toes. And you could probably go through a bit of like a manual clear. But I haven't hit that threshold yet.
Cool. So people don't need to worry about cluttering their memory.md.
I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, if it's saving like the silliest little things, like the tiniest corrections, you can maybe update that Claude.md to say only save like substantial corrections, you know, and then you can have a bit more control about what it's saving. So that's probably what I would do there. But once you've set this up, now when you say something like quit writing so formally, it's going to do the task, then update its agents.md, or in this case Claude.md, to keep tone casual, never formal. And then now in any new session, it's going to keep that preference over time, which is pretty cool. So now we've got our executive assistant set up with memory, and we've given him his role. We now need to connect our tools, because by default, most of these agent harnesses, they just have web search baked in. But if you want to actually start linking it up to your tools like Gmail, Calendar, and everything else, which is where the real productivity gains are made, you need to do so via what's called MCP. And I actually got this MCP explanation from when you had on, is it Ross Mike?
Ross Mike, yeah.
So he did a great explanation, and it just dropped into my head really nicely. And it's basically that before MCPs, your agent or your LLM, in order to speak to tools, it had to kind of learn their language, because Claude speaks English, Notion speaks Spanish, Gmail French, your browser speaks Japanese, and Slack speaks Chinese. And it was capable of connecting to those tools, but it required these extensive custom development that took a long time. But then Anthropic actually created MCP, is that right?
Yep, that's right, yeah.
Anthropic built MCP to basically sit as this translator in between your tools, so that Claude can still just speak English, and your tools can just speak their languages, and this MCP speaks every language, and then just translates your calls from your agent to the tool, and then from the tool back to your agent. So just set a really easy standardized way to connect tools up, and that's what we're going to be using to connect all of these tools to our executive assistant. So if we go back into Cowork here, you can see that Claude make it really, really easy to connect up their tools. You can just go to connectors, browse connectors, and they've got like hundreds of all the biggest apps you probably use. And you can just add them, sign in, pretty self-explanatory. But I believe Codex would be the exact same. You can go skills, or if we go settings, they probably have like a, and then like Manus is the same. For example, if you go into Manus, we can see, we can connect our tools. Very, very simple process. And the same with Complexity Computer. You've got your connectors, you can connect your tools in here. It's just all using that Model Context Protocol, MCP. So I've already, before the episode, gone and connected all of the tools that I use most, like Gmail, Google Calendar, Granola, Notion. They're all set up already as MCPs. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to open up this executive assistant folder in Claude Code to sort of demonstrate how these harnesses are all the same and they work off your local files. And the real future-proof AI stack is just having those markdown files on your computer. And the reason why I like to work in markdown files is because it's just the easiest sort of format for your LLM, for your agent to actually digest and understand, compared to if you were to give it your files as like a docs or a PDF file. So I like to use Claude Code within Visual Studio Code. So you can see here, I'm just going to, it looks very similar to Antigravity. I'm just going to open up our executive assistant folder here. And the way that I see the future of this all going, Greg, is I think that everyone's going to have their, what I call an AI OS, like an operating system. And this will just compound over time, like you saw with adding the rules and getting less errors. But with adding your tools and then skills, which we'll get into, which is basically just training AI on processes. And I think that everyone's going to have like an AI operating system they work in. And everyone will just have personal agents and agents to manage each department of their company. And people won't actually use these apps anymore. Like I've connected up Gmail, Google Drive, Calendar, Granola for my meeting notes, Stripe for payments, Notion for project management. And I don't even enter these tools anymore. I just sit in Claude Code as one central place. And an example here is I sent myself, before the episode, I sent myself an email from a fake prospect. And I also entered in Granola a fake meeting with this prospect. So now I can say things like, summarize my inbox from today.
You know, someone might ask, like, well, how important is that really, you know? Like, is that such a high-value task? Like, what are high-value tasks that you're actually getting done here?
So,
or maybe you get a lot of emails, you know?
Well, if you know, emails is a big thing if you do get a lot of emails, but just having like all those tools connected in one place and not having to switch and copy paste context. So you'll see an example here, right? So we've got summary my inbox today, which is like one of the most basic agent tasks ever. But we can see this is one I sent earlier. We've got this one email here, like our call today. Excited after your call, wants next steps. So I might just say here, okay, great. Review my meeting notes with Moltoshi from today, and then draft up the email, sending the proposal and creating the Stripe payment link, and then go into Notion and set up the project. And where this starts to compound even more is when you start to build out skills for each of your processes. Because every time I do a process, even like this, manually prompting it, and I know I'm going to do it again at some point, I'll then just turn that into a skill. And then you eventually end up, if you automate like 3 to 5 tiny manual processes a week with skills, you eventually end up automating like your entire life with these agents.
Right. So it's not so much in like summarize my emails where it's super valuable. It's like that's where the starting point is, and then you want to like manipulate it and use it and go deeper and stuff like that. That's when connecting these tools really are valuable.
And you can see here, it's now connecting all my tools. So it's gone into Granola and found the full meeting of what we went through today. It's now going into Stripe to create the product link. And then it's going into Notion to set up the project. And then it should create the draft ready for us to go to send out.
That this is really like a new way of working, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's so new, and I even this task, it's really simple, right? Just sending an email based on a call with a proposal link and stuff. But like, even if you can just do something like 7 times faster without having to go into all these tools, copy the meeting notes into the page to give it context on your meeting, it really starts to compound. Then you start to fit like a week in a day, and then 7 weeks in a week. And you stack that up over a year, and you're going to be miles ahead of everyone else. And when we get into skills, you're going to see how this continues to get even better. But you can see here, it's drafted the email. It's pulled in all these insights from our call in Granola, which is like where I do my meeting notes. And then it's created the Stripe payment link. Here, ready to go.
That's cool.
And then now I can just go send this email. And it will use my Gmail integration to go and send it.
That's really cool.
It is, hey. I think this is the new way of working. And Cody Schneider, who had on the pod the other week, I saw a tweet from him and he said that in the future, everyone's going to have like an AI operating system like this, and you're going to have like the 100x employee, because everyone will come into their role with a pre-existing AI operating system and then build out skills for all their manual processes, similar to how I was describing, and just keep building skills each week for anything manual that comes up until eventually their entire life and work life is automated. Great, so you can see here, it's now created the draft here in Gmail ready for us to go. And if we're happy with it in the platform, I could also just ask Claude to send it there and then. But then what also gets really cool is I'm going to demonstrate now how I actually build out skills for these processes. So I know I've talked a lot about skills so far. I want to just give a little overview on what skills actually are.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to think about skills is SOPs for AI. So standard operating procedures for AI. So it means it means once you explain something once, you never have to explain it ever again. An example of this is without skills. If you are creating a proposal for a client, and you're sitting in your Claude chat or whatever agent harness you're using, and you ask it to create this proposal, you're probably going to go back and forth a bunch of times, change the formatting here, use this color blue for this part, put the price at the bottom instead of at the top. And eventually, maybe after 15 minutes, half an hour, you landed a proposal that you're really happy with. And you send it, and then next week, you want another proposal written. But unless you're going and finding the same session and working in that same session, it's going to have completely forgotten all of these preferences. And even if you have that memory system set up, these kind of things, you don't really want clogging up your memory. They're better off as skills, which is basically it packages up that process into a .skill file. And in that .skill file, it's basically just a markdown file that explains the exact process that you went through. So you can create a proposal skill, and then every time you need a proposal written, it just takes that skill, knows exactly what to do, and then you can have that proposal the same way every single time.
So is a skill like a memory file? Like, what's the difference between essentially a memory.md and a skill? Like, is it just like a memory.md file for a particular job to be done?
That's pretty much like exactly it. And all of these agent harnesses pretty much now have skills as a feature. So So you can see here, like if we go into Codex, for example, they've got skills here. Same with Claude as well. And these, when you're working with these agent harnesses that operate like mostly locally off your computer, you can see here, it actually operates out of this hidden file called a .claude folder, skills. And these are all of the skills that I've created. There's tons. And if we open one up, for example, like this one here, let's find a good one. For example, I've got this one here for writing viral hooks. And in this skill, we have a .skill file, which is basically like your memory.md, which explains the exact process for writing viral hooks. And then it's also got packaged in here some references, like hook formulas.
Okay, so wait, so how did you create that skill?
Okay, so there's two ways that I find useful to create skills. Is one, you can have an idea of a skill you want to create off the bat. So like viral hooks, for example, I had this course on viral hooks, which I transcribed, put it into Claude. And Claude has this by default, it has a skill creator skill added into it. Same with all of the major agent harnesses, they'll have a skill creator skill. So it's kind of like skillception. You use the skill creator skill and you say, hey, take this course on viral hooks and create a viral hook skill. And I can create it like that. That's one way. And then we'll package it up nicely with that skill.md. It'll do the whole thing for you.
Wait,
the second
you
way,
asked it to take the course?
Yeah, I uploaded the course, like the full transcript of the course.
Literally.
And I said, yeah, based on this course on viral hooks, build me a viral hook skill. And then I use that for my content team. So just like we're building the executive assistant folder, I've got a folder called content team, and I've got that, that uses that skill for me. And the second way to create skills is going through a process manually once with Claude. And then if you know you're gonna have to do it again, like that proposal example, you can just say once you've done the task, hey, create a skill for what we just did, and it will package up that process you went through. That's the second main way that you can create skills.
So in your viral hook example, if you go into that folder again,
yeah. So
you have a references folder.
Yeah.
So that is probably, like, was that, yeah, let's open it up, I'm just curious.
See here, it's got a full thing about like.
So was this from the course?
Yeah, this was basically from like a little course I put into it.
And did you ask it to create a reference folder? Like, how should people think about?
No, it just did it. It just did it. So I think what would be great is if we could actually demonstrate building skill live.
Let's do it.
And so, for example, like this process here, I could create a skill called like a daily brief skill, you know, that goes through and summarizes like your calendar, your inbox, and your projects in Notion, and plans out your day for you in the morning. And then you can run that on a scheduled task, because a lot of these agent harnesses now are starting to introduce scheduled tasks. So you can just run it on 9 AM every morning, use my daily brief skill to prepare me for my day. But I think another cool one here, just to show you an example, right, of how minute, like how intricate I make these skills, is, let's just say for this fictional meeting I had with this person, I might say, can you draft up an email? I want to refer Maltoshi to my good friend Sebastian, who has an AI automation agency and can help them out better with their needs. And then we can just go, Sebastian's email is, and we can just say that, right? And then now it's going to be able to take the notes from Granola, all the context, and then draft an email connecting these two, a prospect with a friend. And you know, I have different like referral things set up like that with people with marketing agencies. And that's just like a little manual process there, tiny. It maybe takes 15 minutes out of my day. But then I can just go, I want you to use your skill creator skill and create a Sebastian refer skill, so that whenever I ask you to refer someone to Sebastian, you know exactly what to do and you know his email address. And then that'll build out that tiny skill for us, tiny process. But it means I know in the future I'm gonna have to refer someone to Seb again. And even if this skill now saves me 15 minutes, another 5 or 6 times, they start to compound when you create skills for every single little process in your business.
Yeah, I guess it's like, we should just be asking ourselves, like, you know, in our day-to-day life, like, what are all the jobs to be done?
Yeah.
And what are all skills that we need? Like, what are the repetitive processes or SOPs, as you talked about? And then just setting up as many as possible, right? To make our lives easier.
Exactly. And just to give you a little demo here. So I sort of alluded to that folder structure at the start of the video. And this is it here. So I've got workspaces, AI with Remy. And for example, I can open up my content team. And within this folder, this is just like a more elaborate version of our executive assistant. But we've got our Claude.md in here, which explains you are like the main orchestrator, you have these sub-agents. It's just a more elaborate version of that Claude.md. But I've got a skill within this for like meta ads analysis. So that was a process, for example, if you're a marketing agency owner, this is probably like the kind of stuff that you can get inspiration from. Like ads analyzing, taking competitors' ads libraries, breaking down all the creatives and their landing pages. So I built out this ads analyst skill where I literally just do ads analyst and then I paste in like the ads library URL like that, and I'll click run. And I did an example yesterday with the Uni, which is a super large e-com brand, and it ran through and basically scraped it took screenshots of all the landing pages. It went and scraped all of the ads that they were running, all like 220. It then did a full deep dive here on all the ads. Visual analysis, copy analysis, why did this work, what could be improved. It basically did a breakdown of all the landing pages with screenshots. And it did a master report here about everything that's going on. So it just did a full breakdown. And that was like a manual process that I would have gone through when I used to run like my marketing agency. And that probably would have taken me like 3 or 4 hours. And then I went through to build out this skill. I went through the process once with Claude. Like I started a fresh session and I was like, all right, go to this ads library URL, scrape this, do this for like 2 hours. And then after I'd done the entire process, I just said, use your skill creator skill to make a skill for ads analyzing and package up the entire process we just went through as a skill. And then now whenever I want to do that process again, I can just invoke the skill and it knows what to do, which is pretty cool.
Crazy.
Absolutely crazy. So now the refer Sebastian skill is live. And now whenever I want to refer someone to Sebastian again, I can just say, refer to Sebastian, and it will just start to use that skill. That's example, the tiniest process, but you build like those up for all these little tasks you do day to day, and then it just compounds and compounds and compounds. And I can really think of an idea here where you can chain skills together. So you could, example, have like a meeting prep skill that prepares you for a meeting by researching the guest and compiling some talking points. You might have like a podcast research skill, for example, Greg, for a guest that's coming on. And you might also create a morning brief skill. And in the morning brief skill, you can say, if there's any meetings coming up or podcasts in my day, use the podcast research skill to research the guest. And you can like chain them together and build like some really, really cool workflows.
Yeah, and you can have it so it sends you an email, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then now these harnesses are starting to get more and more autonomous. Like they're starting to add like, in the car, they're starting to add like cruise control and stuff. Like now within most of these harnesses, you can schedule tasks, like in CoWork or Claude Code now. And you can like, for example, this one here, you can go new task, and I could say like, run my morning briefing skill. And then set that to go every morning at 9 a.m. And then now it's like an automated workflow that like you've just got running every morning now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm doing this right now. Like for example, I'm buying a new car right now, and it's like a particularly unique like color that I want in feature set, and there's just none really available. So every 3 hours I'm scraping all the different car marketplaces, and then I'm getting a notification that when something comes up, and it's crazy, right? Like it saves me. I'm one of those people that like, if I didn't have this, I would be spending an hour of my day just like checking religiously every single CarMax and Cars.com and AutoTrader and all these websites, and refreshing like an insane person. So the schedule.
That's a great example there. But this is a skill that would be relevant for my executive assistant. Same with that car one. That could be a good executive assistant skill. But then I've got those more elaborate skills built out for like my content team, that ads library scraping one. And then I've got like a weekly research skill for my newsletter team, and that runs on a schedule every Thursday morning to go and scrape. Like I've built the skill out so it goes and scrapes Twitter and Reddit to find what's new in AI. But yeah, skills are so powerful. Combine them with like your MCP so it can use your tools, and you can start to just train up your agent on all the processes in the business. And I did a build out on OpenClaw for a agent to manage meta ads, and it went pretty viral. And the way I built this was with all these key concepts. So OpenClaw functions the exact same way. So I hope it hasn't timed out, but I've remote accessed into my OpenClaw dashboard here. And you can see it's just operating off an agents.md file in the backend. But instead of the .claude folder, it's in the .openclaw folder. And then it's got a couple of these other ones here. It's got a memory.md. It's got some of these other ones that it's added on, like a soul, which tells it its personality, and an identity, which tells it who it is. But it's that same concept of markdown context files, connecting your tools, and then creating skills. So that meta ads manager one that went pretty viral, I just planned it out with Claude. I was like, I want to have this OpenClaw manage my meta ads. Help me write the agents.md file to tell it, you are my meta ads media buyer, you do these processes, And then I created skills. So I created a ad creative skill. So it knew to go look in the Dropbox folder and create creatives. I created a copywriting skill. So it knew how to write good copy for the business. And I just built out, there's probably maybe 15 different skills. And then I would combine scheduled tasks, which is cron jobs, with skills and the context files. And then just give it all the tools it needed. And just following the same process as we just went through to build the executive assistant. I had an OpenClaw meta ads media buyer, which was sick.
I love it. And for the beginner, would you recommend people, use OpenClaw, or should they be using Cowork or Manus and some of the ones you showed?
So, great question. I would say that OpenClaw is probably like one of the hardest to learn and set up of these harnesses. I would say Cowork is probably the easiest. I think Perplexity Computer did a video on it. It's pretty simple too. Same with Manus.
Easy.
But I would definitely learn and get comfortable using like Claude Code or one of these other ones before I started to play around with OpenClaw. And I would also have all the processes built out in Claude Code first. So for example, that executive assistant, over the next 2 weeks, I might build out a bunch of skills like the Sebastian Refer skill, like a daily brief, meeting prep, etc., etc. And then once I'm happy with how it's all functioning in Claude Code, then I could look to migrate that into OpenClaw, where it has that more autonomous nature to it. So that's kind of how I think about using OpenClaw and those other harnesses.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else you wanted to cover?
I mean, like, really, there's no right or wrong way to run these. Like, that was the executive assistant. I've got one built out for all the other departments in my business, and then other businesses I work on, I have the same. And you can just kind of build out that structure with what works for you. You've got, like, one other thing to mention is global versus project level, which I'll just go over super quick. So, like, those skills, for example, you can add them at a global level, which means they apply to every single project you work in, whether it's the executive assistant, your head of marketing, and some skills you want globally because you might use them in every
What a
chat.
shitty team, man.
Like a truncate skill that I created, which just makes, whenever I want to make something shorter, it makes it shorter without compressing the sentences, but just removing sentences that don't need to be there. And that's something I want in every session. So I've got that in global, but you can have project level skills like that Sebastian Refer skill. I would not want that with my head of marketing, because it's just like clogs up the context and you don't need it there. So I would have that as a project level, for example. And you can have global skills versus project skills, global Claude.md versus project Claude.md, and same with MCPs, global MCPs and project MCPs. So that's probably the other concept to go over. But look, other than that, that's pretty much the entire agent's crash course. So it's just that loop running in the back end to complete a task, and connecting in your tools, your context, and the LLM all in one place. And I would just say to work out what roles you want to start to build out an agent for, go into Claude, your favorite chat model, and get it to help you build out those context files through an interview style process. Just say, ask me questions to build this out. I would connect all the tools that you need, and then start building out the skills through daily use. And then pretty soon you can have like pretty powerful AI agents built for every single aspect and department of the business.
Remy, thank you so much. I'll include links in the show notes, in the description, where you can go follow him, get to know him a little bit better. And I appreciate you coming on, dropping some sauce. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for having me on, Greg. It's been a blast.
Welcome to another episode of The Light Cone. Things are a bit different around here. For one thing, Claude Code has totally taken over my life. And if Jared is any indication, I think OpenClaw maybe has taken over his.
I've been really addicted to this new site called Moltbook, where people have unleashed their AIs to interact in the first ever AI agent-only online community. I am here impersonating my personal OpenClaw instance right here.
Okay, I can't do this, guys. We gotta take this out. Okay, we've gotten that out of the way. I mean, some crazy stuff is happening right now. I have non-technical CEO friends who are going all in on OpenClaw. They're automating entire parts of their businesses entirely using OpenClaw right now, which is totally insane. Simultaneous to that, you have product and former engineering CEOs, kind of like myself. It's like I hadn't written code in 10 years. And then now I'm up till 2, 3 a.m. every single night running 4 conductor simultaneous workers with Claude Code. So there's sort of this explosion in model capability. We've been talking about this for several years, but then it feels like it's here. Like AGI is literally actually here, and we're sort of at the thin edge of the wedge. Like everyone now kind of knows like 1 or 2 people who have gone full cyberpsychosis, and I'm one of those people now. What's happening, guys? Like, I mean, you're saying you're all in on Moltbook. What's going on?
Yeah, I feel like your real field, the AGI, moment, Gary, was like getting Claude Code to build basically an entire startup for you, like replicating years of work of your previous startup in like 2 weeks, which is like insane. And I had a similar feel the AGI moment, just reading Multibook, just reading the AI talking to each other and interacting like in their own world with no or minimal human involvement. It just really opened my eyes to what the next few years could look like when the agents are unleashed and go on about their lives without us.
Yeah, I think the no human involvement.
What's up, Ruby?
Like, if you think back a year ago, we were talking about Windsurf versus Windsurf, and like that product experience was essentially like advanced autocomplete, arguably. And now clearly what's going on with Claude Code is like the people just trust the agents to make decisions for them. Like it's like the experience is like, and like you're talking about like 4 or 5 different agents going at the same time and you're switching between them, but you're not actually micromanaging them anymore.
I am
which
on
means
it.
agents are going out there like choosing things, which sort of an interesting, unexpected application of that is like they can go out and choose to post their own content on a site like Moldbook. But then interesting thing for builders is the agents are going to go out and choose tools to use to build things, which is going to essentially create whole economy of agents like picking and choosing their tools or maybe other like products and goods and services, who knows, but you'll essentially have this whole agent economy going on in parallel to the human economy.
I think back in the old days before all of this, dev tools were chosen more from developers talking to each other, or
Stack Overflow. Unbelievable, right?
Or GitHub repos that would trend, that were done by a human. But the go-to-market for dev tools, I think, is dramatically shifting. I think for a couple of things. One, as you noted with the cyberpsychosis, suddenly the market of developers has increased from just 20 million or so developers that are trained in computer science to now anyone in the world could be one.
Hundreds of millions of people now.
Plus all of their agents who are all acting like semi-independently, like Hart is saying.
And then compounded with the agents, who then are sort of the oracle telling you what the best tool is. And we are actually seeing some of those trends with the growth of YC companies, dev tool companies, that are doing really well because of this, of all these trends. And we should talk about those. And why is that?
I mean, one that springs to mind, it's like a stat actually a friend of ours, Yuri Sakolov, had mentioned to me a while ago. It's just like if you look at like the number of databases being created over like simple database, Postgres databases over like the last 12 months, the number just exploded. And that's because it's all people vibe coding and building apps and the agents going out choosing like a database tool, and like a knock-on effect for that for YC companies, Supabase has just seen like an explosion in the demand for databases, right? And what's interesting is the agents are choosing Supabase as a default tool to like set up and host their Postgres database, like because if you like go out and read the documentation online, like Supabase has the best documentation, it's reasonable for the agents to assume that that's like the best tool to use.
There's a great tweet about this. Perhaps we can put up the Van Tassel tweet. It says, "Agents are the software market from now on. Build something."
Integrated into the tools and everywhere. And in addition, kind of like computer using. So right now, these models aren't able to take actions on your behalf, but I think this is a separate little thing. If you start ChatGPT launch the operator, then that's one early example of that, where you can actually hand off control to the model to perform, keyboard and mouse actions on your behalf. So that's also something that I think is very interesting. The last point I have here is just a general comment that there's still a lot of research to potentially do in this domain. One example of that is something along the lines of test time training. So remember that everything we've done above and that we talked about has 2 major stages. There's first the training stage, where we tune the parameters of the model to perform the tasks well. Once we get the parameters, we fix them, and then we deploy the model for inference. From there, the model is fixed. It doesn't change anymore. It doesn't learn from all the stuff that it's doing at test time. It's a fixed number of parameters, and the only thing that is changing is now the tokens inside the context windows. And so the only type of learning, or test time learning, that the model has access to is the in-context learning of its dynamically adjustable context window, depending on what it's doing at test time. So, but I think this is still different from humans, who actually are able to actually learn depending on what they're doing. Especially when you sleep, for example, your brain is updating your parameters or something like that, right? So there's no kind of equivalent of that currently in these models and tools. So there's a lot of more wonky ideas, I think, that are to be explored still, and in particular, I think this will be necessary because the context window is a finite and precious resource, and especially once we start to tackle very long-running multimodal tasks, and we're putting in videos, and these token windows will basically start to grow extremely large, not thousands or even hundreds of thousands, but significantly beyond that. And the only kind of trick we have available to us right now is to make the context windows longer. But I think that approach by itself will not scale to actual long tasks that are working over time. And so I think new ideas are needed in some of those disciplines, in some of those kind of cases and domains where these tasks are going to require very long contexts. So those are some examples of some of the things you can expect coming down the pipe. Let's now turn to where you can actually kind of keep track of this progress and be up to date with the latest and greatest of what's happening in the field. So I would say the 3 resources that I have consistently used to stay up to date are number 1, LM Arena. So let me show you LM Arena. This is basically an all-in leaderboard, and it ranks all the top models And the ranking is based on human comparisons. So humans prompt these models, and they get to judge which one gives a better answer. They don't know which model is which. They're just looking at which model is the better answer. And you can calculate a ranking, and then you get some results. And so what you can see here is the different organizations, like Google Gemini, for example, that produce these models. When you click on any one of these, it takes you to the place where that model is hosted. And then here we see Google is currently on top with OpenAI right behind. Here we see DeepSeek in position number 3. Now the reason this is a big deal is the last column here. You see license. DeepSeek is an MIT licensed model. It's open weights. Anyone can use these weights. Anyone can download them. Anyone can host their own version of DeepSeek, and they can use it in whatever way they like. And so it's not a proprietary model that you don't have access to. It's basically an open weights release. And so this is kind of unprecedented that a model this strong was released with open weights. So pretty cool from the team. Next up, we have a few more models from Google and OpenAI. And then when you continue to scroll down, you start to see some other usual suspects. So xAI here, Anthropic with Sonnet here at number 14. And then Meta with Llama over here. So Llama, similar to DeepSeek, is an open weights model. And so, but it's down here as opposed to up here. Now, I will say that this leaderboard was really good for a long time. I do think that in the last few months, it's become a little bit game, and I don't trust it as much as I used to. I think just empirically, I feel like a lot of people, for example, are using Sonnet from Anthropic, and that it's a really good model. So, but it's all the way down here in number 14. And conversely, I think not as many people are using Gemini, but it's ranking really, really high. So I think use this as a first pass, but sort of try out a few of the models for your tasks and see which one performs better. The second thing that I would point to is the AI News newsletter. So AI News is not very creatively named, but it is a very good newsletter produced by Switz and Friends, so thank you for maintaining it. And it's been very helpful to me because it is extremely comprehensive. So if you go to archives, you see that it's produced almost every other day, and it is very comprehensive, and some of it is written by humans and curated by humans, but a lot of it is constructed automatically with LLMs. So you'll see that these are very comprehensive, and you're probably not missing anything major if you go through it. Of course, you're probably not going to go through it because it's so long, but I do think that these summaries all the way up top are quite good, and I think have some human oversight. So this has been very helpful to me. And the last thing I would point to is just X and Twitter. A lot of AI happens on X, and so I would just follow people who you like and trust and get all your latest and greatest on X as well. So those are the major places that I've worked for me over time. And finally, a few words on where you can find models and where can you use them. So the first one I would say is for any of the biggest proprietary models, you just have to go to the website of that LLM provider. So for example, for OpenAI, that's chat.com, I believe actually works now. So that's for OpenAI. Now for Gemini, I think it's gemini.google.com or AI Studio. I think they have two for some reason I don't understand. No one does. For the open weights models like DeepSeek, Llama, etc., you have to go to some kind of an inference provider of LLMs. So my favorite one is Together.ai, and I showed you that when you go to the playground of Together.ai, then you can sort of pick lots of different models, and all of these are open models of different types, and you can talk to them here as an example. Now, if you'd like to use a base model, like a base model, then this is where I think it's not as common to find base models, even on these inference providers. They are all targeting assistants and chat. And so I think even here I can see base models here. So for base models, I usually go to Hyperbolic because they serve my Llama 3.1 base, and I love that model. And you can just talk to it here. So as far as I know, this is a good place for a base model. And I wish more people hosted base models because they are useful and interesting to work with in some cases. Finally, you can also take some of the models that are smaller and you can run them locally. And so, for example, DeepSeek, the biggest model, you're not going to be able to run locally on your MacBook. But there are smaller versions of the DeepSeek model that are what's called distilled. And then also you can run these models at smaller precision. So not at the native precision of, for example, FP8 on DeepSeek or BF16 on Llama, but much, much lower than that. And don't worry if you don't fully understand those details, but you can run smaller versions that have been distilled and that have even lower precision, and then you can fit them on your computer. And so you can actually run pretty okay models on your laptop. And my favorite, I think, place I go to usually is LM Studio, which is basically an app you can get. And I think it kind of actually looks really ugly, and I don't like that it shows you all these models that are basically not that useful. Like, everyone just wants to run DeepSeek. So I don't know why they give you these 500 different types of models. They're really complicated to search for, and you have to choose different distillations and different precisions, and it's all really confusing. But once you actually understand how it works, and that's a whole separate video, then you can actually load up the model. Like here I loaded up Llama 3.2 instruct 1 billion. And you can just talk to it. So I ask for Pelican jokes, and I can ask for another one, and it gives me another one, etc. All of this that happens here is locally on your computer. So we're not actually going to anyone else. This is running on the GPU on the MacBook Pro. So that's very nice. And you can then eject the model when you're done, and that frees up the RAM. So LM Studio is probably like my favorite one, even though I think it's got a lot of UI UX issues, and it's really geared towards professionals almost. But if you watch some videos on YouTube, I think you can figure out how to use this interface. So those are a few words on word finding. So let me now loop back around to where we started. The question was when we go to ChatGPT.com and we enter some kind of a query and we hit go. What exactly is happening here? What are we seeing? What are we talking to? How does this work? And I hope that this video gave you some appreciation for some of the under the hood details of how these models are trained and what this is that is coming back. So in particular, we now know that your query is taken and is first chopped up into tokens. So we go to token.
Last year, I finally decided I need a Notion replacement. I was sick of... And this is the I sub-zero B. And now what we want to do is, according to this model, we need to multiply x1 times w1 and x2 times w2, and then we need model looks like a sequence of exactly 15 tokens. And these are the little text chunks that the model sees. Now, there's a vocabulary here of 200,000 roughly of possible tokens. And then these are the token IDs corresponding to all these little text chunks that are part of my query. And you can play with this and update it, and you can see that, for example, this is case sensitive, you would get different tokens, and you can kind of edit it and see live how it's going on under sequence of tokens. Okay, so let's come back to ChatGPT now. The ChatGPT application transfers control back to us, and we can take turns. Together, we are building out the token stream, which we also call the context window. So the context window is kind of like this working memory of tokens, and anything that is inside this context window is kind of like in the working memory of this conversation, and is very directly accessible by the model. Now, what is this entity here that we are talking to, and how should we think about it? Well, this language model here, we saw that the way it is trained, in the previous video we saw there are two major stages, the pre-training stage and the post-training stage. The pre-training stage is kind of like taking all of internet, chopping it up into tokens, and then compressing it into a single kind of like zip file. But the zip file is not exact. The zip file is lossy and probabilistic zip file, because we can't possibly represent all of internet in just one sort of like, say, terabyte of zip file, because there's just way too much information. So we just kind of have the gestalt or the vibes inside this zip file. Now, what's actually inside the zip file are the parameters of a neural network. And so, for example, a 1 terabyte zip file would correspond to roughly, say, 1 trillion parameters inside this neural network. And what this neural network is trying to do is it's trying to basically take tokens and it's trying to predict the next token in a sequence. But it's doing that on internet documents. So it's kind of like this internet document generator, right? And in the process of predicting the next token in a sequence on internet, the neural network gains a huge amount of knowledge about the world. And this knowledge is all represented and stuffed and compressed inside the 1 trillion parameters, roughly, of this language model. Now, this pre-training stage also we saw is fairly costly. So this can be many tens of millions of dollars, say like 3 months of training and so on. So this is a costly, long phase. For that reason, this phase is not done that often. So for example, GPT-4o, this model was pre-trained probably many months ago, maybe like even a year ago by now. And so that's why these models are a little bit out of date. They have what's called a knowledge cutoff, because that knowledge cutoff corresponds to when the model was pre-trained, and its knowledge only goes up to that point. Now, some knowledge can come into the model through the post-training phase, which we'll talk about in a second, but roughly speaking, you should think of these models as kind of like a little bit out of date, because pre-training is way too expensive and happens infrequently. So any kind of recent information, like if you want to talk to your model about something that happened last week or so on, we're going to need other ways of providing that information to the model, because it's not stored in the knowledge of the model. So we're going to have various tool use to give that information to the model. Now, after pre-training, there's the second stage, called post-training. And the post-training stage is really attaching a smiley face to this zip file, because we don't want to generate internet documents. We want this thing to take on the persona of an assistant that responds to user queries. And that's done in a process of post-training, where we swap out the dataset for a dataset of conversations that are built out by humans. So this is basically where the model takes on this persona, and that actually, so that we can like ask questions and it responds with answers. So it takes on the style of an assistant, that's post-training, but it has the knowledge of all of internet, and that's by pre-training. So these two are combined in this artifact. Now, the important thing to understand here, I think, for this section, is that what you are talking to is a fully self-contained entity by default. This language model, think of it as a 1 terabyte file on a disk. Secretly, that represents 1 trillion parameters and their precise settings inside the neural network that's trying to give you the next token in the sequence. But this is the fully self-contained entity. There's no calculator, there's no computer and Python interpreter, there's no World Wide Web browsing, there's none of that. There's no tool use yet in what we've talked about so far. You're talking to a zip file. If you string tokens to it, it will respond with tokens back. And the zip file has the knowledge from pre-training, and it has the style and form from post-training. And so that's roughly how you can think about this entity. So if I had to summarize what we talked about so far, I would probably do it in the form of an introduction of ChatGPT in a way that I think you should think about it. So the introduction would be, hi, I'm ChatGPT. I'm a 1 terabyte zip file. My knowledge comes from the internet, which I read in its entirety about 6 months ago, and I only remember vaguely. Okay? And my winning personality was programmed, by example, a human libelers at OpenAI. So the personality is programmed in post-training, and the knowledge comes from compressing the internet during pre-training. And this knowledge is a little bit out of date, and it's probabilistic and slightly vague. Some of the things that probably are mentioned very frequently on the internet, I will have a lot better recollection of than some of the things that are discussed very rarely, very similar to what you might expect with a human. So let's now talk about some of the repercussions of this entity and how we can talk to it and what kinds of things we can expect from it. Now, I'd like to use real examples when we actually go through this. So for example, this morning I asked ChatGPT the following: how much caffeine is in one shot of Americano? And I was curious because I was comparing it to matcha. Now, ChatGPT will tell me that this is roughly 63 milligrams of caffeine or so. Now, the reason I'm asking ChatGPT this question, that I think this is okay, is, number one, I'm not asking about any knowledge that is very recent. So I do expect that the model has sort of read about how much caffeine there's in one shot. I don't think this information has changed too much. And number two, I think this information is extremely frequent on the internet. This kind of a question and this kind of information has occurred all over the place on the internet. And because there was so many mentions of it, I expect the model to have good memory of it in its knowledge. So there's no tool use, and the model, the zip file, responded that there's roughly 63 milligrams. Now, I'm not guaranteed that this is the correct answer. This is just its vague recollection of the internet. But I can go to primary sources, and maybe I can look up, okay, caffeine and Americano, and I can verify that, yeah, it looks to be about 63 is roughly right. And you can look at primary sources to decide if this is true or not. So I'm not strictly speaking guaranteed that this is true, but I think probably this is the kind of thing that ChatGPT would know. Here's an example of a conversation I had 2 days ago, actually. And there's another example of a knowledge-based conversation and things that I'm comfortable asking of ChatGPT with some caveats. So I'm a bit sick, I have runny nose, and I want to get meds that help with that. So it told me a bunch of stuff. I want my nose to not be runny, so I gave it a clarification based on what it said. And then it kind of gave me some of the things that might be helpful with that. And then I looked at some of the meds that I have at home, and I said, does Dayquil and NyQuil work? And it went off and it kind of like went over the ingredients of Dayquil and NyQuil and whether or not they help mitigate runny nose. Now, when these ingredients are coming here, again, remember, we are talking to a zip file that has a